There was once a man who called up a law firm called Schwartz, Schwartz, and Schwartz. The man who answered the phone responded, said, "Hello, law offices of Schwartz, Schwartz, and Schwartz here. How can I help you?" And the caller replied, "Can I please speak with Mr. Schwartz?" "Sorry," the man responded on the other end. "He's away on vacation." "Well then, can I please speak with Mr. Schwartz?" He passed away a year ago, I'm sorry to inform you." "Well then, let me speak with Mr. Schwartz, please." The man replied, "Speaking." There are some among us, usually the truly humble, who are reluctant to admit that someone is trying to reach us, that the person on the other end of the line is actually interested in speaking with me. And we are reluctant to admit that God is talking to us. We think that the message must always be for someone else. Something happens in the world, something happens in our lives, even in our own backyard, and the message is always to someone else. How many times have you heard a powerful Musar sermon and someone turns to his neighbor and says, "You see, speaking to that guy, he's talking to you." How many times I've spoken about a topic that's relevant to an individual and they say, "You really showed them, Rabbi. You really told them." But often the message is to us. Often someone's trying to reach this Mr. Schwartz. Our Parsha begins with a strange letter, an Aleph Ze'ira, Vayikra. In the end of the word Vayikra, it says the Aleph is small. It says Os Katan, a small letter. Vayikra el Moshe, and God spoke to Moshe. Our rabbis took note of this small Aleph, but also contrasted the existence of the Aleph to another Vayikra, where the Aleph is completely absent. It's so small it doesn't even appear on the text. Vayikar Elokim el Bilam. And God called out to Bilam, Vayomer Elav et Shivat hamizbechot arachti va'al par va'ayel hamizbeach. Rashi explains the difference between the Vayikra by Moshe and the Vayikar without the Aleph by Bilam, the Drasha, the evil one. Rashi says that when it comes to Moshe, he sensed that Hashem was calling out to him, Vayikra. God was present in his life, but when it came to Bilam, God spoke to him, but he saw it as mikre be'alma. He saw it as happenstance, Vayikar, like by Amalek. It wasn't God resonating with him. It wasn't God speaking on the other end. It was God who was talking just to them. He really showed them. The message was for someone else. When it comes to Moshe, the message is to him. Vayikra. The Aleph is present. Elokim is in his life. When it comes to Bilam, the Aleph is not present. God is speaking, but not to me. It's all random. It's all a bunch of events that don't really make much sense. And yet with this lesson very clear, this contrast being made between Bilam and Moshe, we still have to deal with the fact that the Aleph is Ze'ira. The Aleph in Vayikra is small. Why is the Aleph small in our Parsha? The Baal HaTurim explains the reason the Aleph is minimized is because it represents Moshe's humility. Moshe was a man who didn't need to insert himself into the picture. Moshe was Anav Mikol Adam. He was the greatest prophet that ever existed, and yet he was the most humble of all prophets. Bilam, on the other hand, doesn't see God speaking to him whatsoever. And when you live life like that, there's no room for God, it's just me. It also absolves a person of all responsibility. When it comes to Moshe, he senses God is speaking to him, but he's able to reduce his own presence. He's able to minimize his own existence in the story, though he knows God is speaking to him. It's not only about him. You find this dialectic, on the one hand, of sensing God is speaking to us, but minimizing the role we play in the Haggadah Shel Pesach, in the Haggadah that we recite on Seder night. Our rabbis point out that the Haggadah is missing one key player in the Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim. Moshe Rabbeinu is not present. Yotzienu Hashem Mitzrayim, lo yedei malach, lo yedei sarav, lo yedei shaliach. God brought us out of Egypt not by way of a malach, not by way of celestial being, not through a messenger. God brought us out of Egypt by himself. HaKadosh Baruch Hu bichvodo uve'atzmo. There is no other player. Yes, Moshe plays a role, but when we tell over the story, we reduce Moshe's presence, the Aleph Ze'ira. And yet the Rambam says something interesting. In Hilchos Chametz U'Matzah, Perek Zayin, the 7th chapter of the laws of Chametz U'Matzah, Halacha Bet, Mitzvah L'Hodia Levanim, it's a mitzvah to tell your children about the Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim. And then in the end, Im haya ben gadol v'chacham odiu ma she'ira lanu Mitzrayim. If he's a wise child, you inform that child everything that happened to us in Egypt, the miracles that God wrought. Al yedei Moshe Rabbeinu, hakol lefi da'ato shel bein. And you tell him, based on the knowledge of the child, that everything happened by God through his shaliach, through his messenger, Moshe Rabbeinu. So I don't understand. On the one hand, we make a big deal about the fact that Moshe Rabbeinu is not mentioned in the Haggadah. It's just God, it's only God, it's no angel, no messenger, no one else. And yet, the Rambam tells us that if you want to fulfill the mitzvah of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim, you need to make mention of Moshe Rabbeinu as the Shaliach Hashem. Which one is it? Is Moshe part of the story? Is Moshe not part of the story? So I think the answer is very simple. On the one hand, we can't live our lives in the world of Vayikra. We can't live our lives thinking that every time God speaks, he's speaking to someone else. It's just mikra, it's just random, it doesn't have any resonance with me. It's not relevant in my life. But on the other hand, we have to see our role in the story as well. But it has to be a minimized role. We have to see our place in the story. God is talking to me, but he's not just talking to me. God is calling to us, but it's larger than us. God is speaking to me and my family, but it's not just about the needs of my family. It's not just about whether I have the requisite amount of toilet paper and supplies. There's a bigger story here. There's a community. There's a world. And yet, if we're not part of it, then we also ignore the fact that God is speaking. At the end of this, there will be two stories to tell. There will be the story of me. Our children and grandchildren will ask us, where were you when the coronavirus pandemic took place? We all remember where we were, 9/11. Those of us who are old enough, not myself, who were present in the world when JFK was shot, we all remember where we were, what we were doing at that moment. I remember exactly what I was doing when I heard about the planes crashing into the World Trade Center. I remember leaving the pizza shop, the bagel shop across the street from YU, going to the base medrash, hearing the story about the first plane, and the second one, and then saying Tehillim. They will ask us, where were we when this happened? What were we doing? What was it like? That's the story of me, the story of the Moshe in Mitzrayim. But then there'll be the larger story, the story of how God was speaking to us, what God was doing. The story that's not just about me and my organization and my family. The story about resources being shared, about the collective, about the community coming together, about not just one chesed organization, not just 2, but 5, 6, 7, all forming their resources or bringing their resources together, coordinating. Not one Torah institution, not one kollel, not one shul, not one rabbi, not one individual, but everyone working together. We can't have hand in hand, we certainly have our hands together. It's a big picture moment in history. It's a big picture moment where God is talking to all of us, but also God is speaking to me. I am not irrelevant. So we read the Haggadah and we get ready for Pesach. We are asked to do two things. We are asked to find where God is speaking to us. What does he want from us? And what does he want from me? Those are two questions we need to ask. We need to bring the individual and the collective together. I think there is one area from a safety standpoint in which we mustn't ignore this dialectic, this dual relationship. We read in the Haggadah that Rabbi Elazar Behold, he says, I am like 70 years. When he took over the Nesios after Rabban Gamliel was deposed, he was a young man. He was a teenager. And he didn't understand how he would be accepted in the Beis Medrash by the authorities, by the Chachamim, by the sages, by the generation as the chief rabbi. And a miracle occurred, and rows of gray hair appeared on his head. Suddenly he looked like an older man. And he said, Harei ani kiven shivim shana. The Mishnah in the end of the first chapter of Brachos, I am like a 70-year-old man now. My friend and colleague Rabbi Levi Mostavsky pointed out to me that this might very well be the most important message of our time. You have 18-year-olds, 20-year-olds partying on Venice Beach. They're playing around like they don't recognize there's a virus going on in the world, that there's a risk in the world, that their lives and other lives are in danger. But you have to see yourself like you are a Ben Shiv'im Shana, like you are 70 years old. You can't pretend that you are invulnerable, that you are impeachable, that you are someone who can never be taken down because you are of low risk. Remember, Harei ani kiven shivim shana. God is not just talking to me right now. He's talking to me as part of that community. I am like the 70-year-old. I mustn't be that person who thinks that it's just about me in this moment. How can we find God speaking to us in this moment? And how can we see ourselves as living in a time and in a destiny, in a journey that is larger than just ourselves? If we can do that, we can understand that God calls to us Vayikra, but the Aleph is small. The Aleph is Ze'ira. It's not just about us. It's about us playing a tiny role in a much larger process that hopefully will become clear to us very soon. Shabbat Shalom, in good health, and I miss you all very much.